Man, I gotta tell you, I am so excited to put this dude in place. If you're not familiar with these, this is called a Tapmatic. It's basically a tapping head. You can use this in a milling machine or even a drill press. And so under power, you can tap threads. This has a mechanism in there, like a transmission that utilizes the normal rotation of a drill press. And as it taps the hole, when you get to the bottom of the quill stroke, you release it. This reverses and the tap comes out with that transmission. Has a clutch in there so you don't break taps. I'll talk more about that later, but super excited. And this is not exactly woodworking, but it is woodworking related because I am making these dudes. These hold down a clamp for the sliding table saws, and drilling holes in all this aluminum is pretty straightforward, but that is a lot of holes to tap by hand and to get them straight. So I needed a better way. Found this. They said it was used on eBay, but it looks brand new. But anyway, this came with 2 arbors. This one I believe would fit in our Bridgeport. I say our, was my dad's. My brother Andy and I are about the only ones that use it now out of all the brothers. This is a 1/2-inch shank that would fit in a drill press, but didn't make sense to me to have, you know, the arbor on the drill press, then the chuck, and then clamping onto this. It just gets too long, so we want to shorten that up. So, but I had another arbor that will fit this. So this end is JT33, and then this is Morse Taper 3 that will fit my drill press. So I had to take that one out, and this dude was stuck. I couldn't hardly get that out. I couldn't hardly get it out. I got it out, but it was a challenge. And the way I got that out, I ended up drilling a hole in the end of this because there's really no, typically you can use wedges to force that out like a fork, but this doesn't have much of a shoulder, so I couldn't really get on there. So what I ended up doing is I drilled the end. These are hardened, but they're case hardened. So, and on the end, I was able to drill that, tap some threads, used a 5/16 fine thread, so a fine thread will work better to torque that out of there, and put some washers. I must have put this back in, it got tight again, but anyway, was able to pop that out like that, right? And so now I can put this dude in, and this will go into the drill press. Actually, first, let me show you some of the features of this thing. So inside here is a jaw that will accept the square end of a tap. And this one is size. This is the 50X, and it'll accept, number 6 to a 1/2-inch tap. Or in my case, I'm using metric. This is an M10. This will also accept M3 to M12, right? Of course, these get that with a knob. Actually, here's one already made up. That's what I'm after, but I want this nice and straight. And like I said, I've got about 100 of these holes to tap. And this is going to be the dude to help me get that done. These have these unique collars, I guess. They have rubber in there, so they kind of squeeze that tap, but they give you a little bit of slack. So if things aren't perfectly straight, it gives us a little bit of leeway so you don't bust a tap. But anyway, you start by inserting this through there. Of course, line that up to allow those jaws to grab that. You want to squeeze this hand tight. Lock that little jaw in place. Let's tighten that up a bit more. This also came with wrenches. It's really surprising when you find used stuff with all the wrenches. Then you tighten that down. And that centers that tap concentrically. Now this was labeled as used, but I think maybe somebody bought it and never used it, and I got it for about half price because these things can be pricey. But it came with paperwork, like I mentioned, 2 arbors, right? Wrenches, and what else? Oh, another collet for a bigger tap. This is maybe for an M12 tap. You know, one that would have a bigger 4-sided shank. And yeah, I mean, this thing looks brand new. You can see that this arm is never even hit. This arm is to prevent this part of the device from spinning. And I'll show you that when we get this in the drill press. But yeah, super excited to have this thing, man. It's going to be awesome. I thought about getting a tapping arm. I just think this will work better than a tapping arm in my case.
Obviously, I've already removed the chuck, and for those that aren't familiar with that procedure, I'll show that toward the end of the video. Now, you need something solid to hammer against when you're seating something like this, so I'm going to remove this collet. And I believe this deep well socket will work well to seat against a rigid portion of this device. You can see that's pretty solid. We don't want to be hammering on this area here, right? And definitely not on the end. Absolute cleanliness is vital with Morse tapers. They need to be super clean for them to seat correctly. Also a great time to check for any burrs on the internal section. They make tapered reamers to clean those up. Of course, the shaft, if it has any burrs, can be cleaned up easily as well. Of course, if Morse tapers aren't seated correctly, they can turn, slip, and gouge. Yeah, camera's in the way. Always.
All right, I realize that this is extremely comical in the machinist metalworking arena, but hey, we're woodworkers, we improvise. So this is my vise. This needs this arm for this to stop against, right? And still be able to move up and down as I operate the quill. Now, this is not exactly the right kind of tap. I believe this is a spiral point tap, and the chips extract out the top. I need what's called a gun tap, which, as the name implies, it shoots the chips forward and into this hole. There's a hole in the bottom of this. I've got some of those on order, but this is working. Check this out. Add a little bit of lube. Watch this. This is awesome. You can hear those clutches working. And just like that, boom, boom, boom. That is awesome, yeah? Let's do some more. Massive time saver. I almost can't believe how easy that works. Boom, 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 boom. Bang, 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 bang. That is awesome. Man, I love that. Tapmatic.
Did I mention that this thing was awesome? Yeah, I literally tapped all these holes way faster than I was able to drill them. They work that well. I wanted to show or share a little bit more information about this drill press, which is actually not very good. I bought it because it's a radial drill press, so it has a really deep reach. And I also wanted to show a little bit about this crude homemade wooden vise. See this vertical chunk of walnut, it catches that arm. It prevents that from rotating like I mentioned earlier. But I thought it would be better if it was made out of metal because that arm will inevitably get notches and it won't travel easily. You can see how this will slide up and down that hardened steel bolt much better. It's a grade 8 bolt. And some pros and cons on this drill press. Back here in the back, these had individual bolts. On the back side, I ended up welding some grade 8 bolts to a plate so that I don't have to back those up. I can just release them from this side. With that loose, I can raise and lower this like normal. And that works pretty well. Just to clarify things, I added a bit of a backdrop, and you can see how beautiful this reach is. 23 inches to the column, right? So that is awesome. That's about 600 millimeters. Well, maybe not quite, 570, somewhere in there. Anyway, very deep. However, despite having a very heavy and beefy column, that 23-inch reach, it causes a problem. See how that drill head flexes? That's not good. Working with wood, that's fine, but with metal and trying to be accurate, me no likey. So my funky little low-budget workaround is I have these 2 columns of cherry, and I attach this piece of oak across here, and I can wedge and tighten that up, and that eliminates flex, upward flex. It helps. It's not ideal. This is the Grizzly radial drill press. If you need a deep reach, I'd recommend finding something else. Now, again, this may be well known, but I guarantee not everybody knows this. We're going to remove this arbor. It wouldn't matter if it was connected to a drill chuck or this Tapmatic. We can bring this quill down until you expose that slot. Line up that other slot. And now we have this key. Now, I have a bit of a gripe with these because this material is mild steel. It is just way too soft. I'm periodically cleaning it up, but you can see how easily I can put a notch in that with a file. For just a little bit more money, that could be hardened steel, and also it should have a shallower ramp. Anyway, you simply insert the wedge or key, make sure there's something to catch whatever you're releasing, and that dude will just pop right out. Installation of this chuck will work the same way. You do have to line up the end of it to where it engages. You can just tap it in place slightly. That'll hold it. A small lead sledge works ideal for this. And actually, I should have released that depth stop, but they seat fairly easily. On a chuck, make sure the jaws are retracted or, not sticking out. In other words, tap the chuck Norris, not the chuck jaws. Now, while this guy sets up this Tapmatic, I'm going to give you a little bit more information. There are a lot of them on eBay, but be aware if it has a model number 20, 40, 60, or 80X, that's a non-reversing type Tapmatic. They're older versions, and I believe those were used in milling machines where the operator had the option to reverse the motor and pull the tap out of the hole. So, unless you have 3-phase or a drill press that has that capability, those even-numbered models won't do you any good. Some of the newer models, they start with 30, 50, 70, and 90X, and those numbers reflect the size of taps that they can accommodate. Of course, there are other models and numbers. Do your research. Now, although I love this Tapmatic, I want to mention that these are not for everybody. You're not going to see these in big machine shops. They're going to be using, CNC milling machines that have way better accuracy and capacity to handle tapping threads. These are, in my opinion, for someone like me that is a woodworker, but I have to tap a bunch of holes on occasion. At the beginning of the video, I had mentioned the clutches, and here you can see these numbers. They relate to the clutch settings. Yeah, this knurled portion here at the top, you can twist that and adjust it If it's slipping, tighten it a little bit more. You can set that little set screw when you get it where you want it. I actually measured mine so I could keep track, but that's because I'm weird. One other thing that I wanted to add is if you use a tap, make sure it doesn't have this conical tip. That can just be ground off. That way the square part of the tap can seat correctly within the jaws. Yeah, I love this dude so much, I made it a special box. Now, those funky looking corners, it's called a pin and crescent. Just thought I'd do, something different.
So this dude this mounts to the top of your drill press, and it holds this arm, keeps it from spinning, right? So that dude goes in there. A couple of extra shafts, right? These dudes go in there. This is an extra socket I had, and with that, you can seat this part into the female Morse taper cavity by hitting it with like a lead mallet underneath here. So you don't want to hit on this part. But you can hit that, that's pretty solid. So that dude goes there. Wrenches right there. And this dude, boom, just like that. Got all the paperwork. This is kind of an afterthought, but this will fit on the bottom of the lid. Magnets, surprised. Boom. That's how you do it.
And that is a wrap for this video. If you have very many holes to tap, these things are incredible. Do me a huge favor if you haven't already and hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching.